Hello everyone, I'm Kamal Santamaria and welcome to the second of our Best of 2013 editions of Counting the Cost, as we look back on some of the highlights of our show this year. And we want to start with something I regarded as probably the most interesting interview I'd done in a long time. It was all about 3D printing, but not the headline grabbing or gimmicky stuff. No, this was 3D bioprinting. The idea, in fact the very real process, of creating living cells for medical use. In this case, it was for women having reconstructive surgery after breast cancer. The company was Tevido Bio Devices. The CEO was Laura Bosworth, who joined us from Austin, Texas.
Well, it's an exciting technology, and really the ink is a combination of cells. So in our case with Tevido, we're working with skin cells and fat cells mostly. And it's a mixture of that with a little bit of media that gives it some fluidity. And we have some other biomaterials that we used that are part of our patented process. And that's the ink. And we print on a hydrogel, which is really the paper.
And how new is this technology, Laura? Because it's got this very futuristic feel to it. And to me it kind of seems like not just on the curve, but well ahead of the curve, really.
Well, 3D printing has been probably in place since the early 70s for rapid prototyping. So being able to build a model of a building for architects, things like that, so that you can kind of get a visual perspective on it. So that itself has been around for a long time. What is relatively new is the printing of living cells. And in fact, my co-founder has one of the first patents for the use of bioprinting living cells. And I believe that was issued in 2006. So, kind of at the turn of that decade, the late 90s and the early 2000s. But that has been in research.
Of course, you are running a business, Laura, so we have to talk about that side of things, the actual business side of things, and the amount of money you have to put into this and how well you can get funding, because from everything you've described it sounds like it would be a very expensive business.
Well, anytime you bring a medical product to market, it's fairly expensive. We are still in the relatively early stages, moving out of research into our product development. And so there is quite a bit of funding available for that type of activity from federal sources. There's a recognition that this type of investment can be quite costly, and so there are research dollars that kind of jumpstart us, and we are just in the phase of beginning to raise our equity that we need from investors to take this to market.
And are you subjected to the same rules and regulations of the FDA, the US Food and Drug Administration? Because what you're doing is essentially creating something new and living. And I wonder if how that is watched over and regulated and kept in check.
That is a great question. I like to think about it in two ways. 3D printing itself is really just a manufacturing process. And so that alone doesn't necessarily require significant change from the regulatory approach. What does start to get different is, what types of cells are you using? So it's kind of this living tissue that begins to be very interesting. And today there are quite a few tissue engineered, that's what we call them, products in the market, and that have been in the market probably since about the 99 or 2000. A lot of them around skin that have been produced. So it's not completely new. What is interesting is if you're starting to use the patient's own cells. So in our case, we would perform a liposuction and use the fat cells from the woman to help create the implant. So it would be very natural. And it's her own cells. So should that have a lot of regulation? You certainly want to be sure it's safe. But the millions and millions in dollars, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars that it often takes to bring things to market are probably not appropriate. So that is a bit of a new space to figure out how much do you need, because it needs to be safe, but you don't want to shut down the competition and the creativity in this new field because of regulatory requirements.
It was absolutely fascinating talking to Dr. Bosworth about that, and a nice change, from dealing with the usual doom and gloom economic news. Though, of course, we did have to do that too, what with all the US debt ceiling drama, and the fact that really the global economy is still not in great shape. Perhaps the best economic snapshot we got was back in October, the World Economic Outlook from the International Monetary Fund, expertly but simply explained by its Deputy Managing Director, Namat Shafiq. Short story, very broad question, but why? What's going wrong? Why are things pulling back like this?
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting story because even though the aggregate numbers are adjusted downward, there are very different dynamics going on in the world economy today. The advanced economies, the US, Japan, and even Europe are beginning to see recovery. The US is growing pretty robustly, and Japan is having a recovery of its growth as a result of Abenomics. The big downward adjustment is really in the emerging markets, where we're seeing really a couple of things. We're seeing a more adverse external environment for them. They've had a very good few years, the emerging markets, between the combination of higher commodity prices and low global interest rates, and that's been very good for emerging markets. And that period is coming to an end. And then there are also domestic factors in several of the key emerging markets to do with domestic reforms lagging in countries like India and structural changes in the economies going on in countries like China. So that's where the largest adjustments have been. For the low-income countries, they will grow between 4% and 5% over the next couple of years. So they're sort of holding steady.
And do you buy into this argument that emerging economies have been affected by the indecision of the US Fed over the quantitative easing and the tapering? Because, this was another idea that was thrown out there a lot.
Well, we had a sort of mini stress test in May when the Fed chairman mentioned the tapering word, and we saw an outflow of capital from emerging markets because in anticipation of higher interest rates. That sort of reversed and has stabilized somewhat in recent months, but in many ways it was a good test of the resilience of those markets, and I think many of those countries now realize they need to begin to prepare for a world of higher interest rates. So clearly the Fed's actions will matter, but we haven't really seen the full consequences. What we've been saying is that it's very important that this exit from unconventional monetary policy be orderly and very clearly communicated. It's as much a communications challenge as it is a technical challenge. And if that is done, we think that the negative consequences can be minimized.
Now, Matt, this is real sort of crystal ball territory, but I'm going to try it anyway. I think it's worth it. 5 years on from this economic crisis, from the start of this economic crisis, do you think we could have reasonably expected to be in better shape by now? It just feels like this is dragging on with no real end in sight.
Yeah. From a normal recession, you can expect to start to see signs of recovery in 2 to 3 years. But this was not a normal recession. We call it the Great Recession. So in that sense, it's not surprising that it's taking a long time to see a recovery. Now, of course, looking back, we can say, oh, well, this should have been done more quickly, or that problem should have been resolved a bit better. But I have to say I'm not surprised that it's taking this long. I think what I would say is that we have seen, in many ways, the worst of the crisis. In some ways, we were on cliff edge at many points in the last 5 years. I think we're no longer on the edge of a cliff. We're sort of slogging through a swamp. And there are many difficult reforms, what we've called difficult transitions, that different parts of the world economy are going through. The US transitioning toward hopefully a more sustainable fiscal path and some medium-term view on where fiscal policy is going, but also transitioning to higher growth rates. Japan's transition with Abenomics. Europe finally bottoming out in terms of the crisis, but hopefully transitioning toward a higher growth path. And the emerging markets transitioning to more mature economies. And so really the challenge now is for all of us to get through these transitions in an orderly way, and then hopefully see a much more durable recovery thereafter.
Towards the end of 2013, we managed to get out of the studio a bit more and look at some different sorts of things because, we talk about austerity and debt a lot, and rightly so, but that doesn't mean it's not interesting to see how the other half lives. We certainly got an eye into that world when we visited the Qatar International Boat Show. There's a great big super yacht there, and for some reason they let me on board. Francesco, it is. Why don't you go ahead first? It's not often, in fact, I think if ever, that I actually do an interview in my socks. But I guess that speaks to the very high level of boat building that we're talking about here. This is not just basic motorboating, is it?
It is not a basic motorboat for sure. This one is a Mangusta 165, 50 meters, and is the fastest and biggest maxi open yacht in the world.
You have to tell me now how much it costs. This is the thing. Our program's called Counting the Cost, so I want to know what the cost is.
Let's say the asking price today is 29 million euro, and then it depends by the specification and by the requirements we have to build on. But we are more or less on that figure.
Okay. So tell me, at a price of 29 million euros, I'm thinking you've got a fairly narrow market here. I mean, who is buying these? How many are you making? What's the market actually like for this?
Actually, we have a very narrow market everywhere. We represent a niche in the luxury yacht market. We built a few yachts per year, but the one we built are fully custom, means fully built according to owner specification.
Let's talk about the industry first and your side of it. You're an Italian company and this super yacht is 100% Italian made. Does that suggest the industry is very strong in Italy? Because all we hear is about, you know, the bad news coming out of Italy, the jobs crisis and austerity problems and all this, but clearly something good going on in the marine industry there.
This is a very good question. Unfortunately, it's something we have to fight with. Every time we go abroad, we travel abroad and out of Italy. Actually, if we look at the Italian industry, and I'm not just talking about marine industry, we are doing much better than our government. Sorry for saying that, but it's actually the truth. Italian industry is still very strong, and most of them are doing very well thanks to the export. Of course, Middle East is the place to be. There's money around, and it's the first requirement for our industry. What we are experiencing over the last 3-4 years, there is more interested in keeping the boat here in the region, and it means that the domestic market is growing up. And this is very important news for us, and that's why we are here.
Should I show you the interior now?
I'd love to. I've got a sneaking suspicion I don't even have to touch the door handle here. Look at that. It's going to open by itself.
Please.
Lovely. Thank you. Gosh, look at this. Is this, I was going to say, is this typical of what you'd find inside one of your boats, or is there no such thing as typical when it comes to designing a super yacht?
Actually, there's nothing typical, because each boat each Mangusta is built according to customer specification and according to the use of the boat. That can be a private or commercial, means for charter activity.
So again, earlier you were telling me that nothing is typical.
No.
And I'm guessing that's the case here. I mean, we've seen 4 bedrooms that way and then a master bedroom this way with separate... What you tell us about it, you tell us.
Yeah, sure. This is very special requirement. This boat has been designed for charter use. And what we realize is a very large master cabin with a full beam bathroom, which is shared in 2 different parts. One for the lady with a bathtub, and one for the gentleman with a very big shower and steam sauna as well. Nothing is typical. Materials, style, decoration, everything is decided together with the owner. This decoration, for example, is very, let's say, Arab tradition, following the Arab tradition for the local market, but we can interpret the desire and the requirements of any boat owner by doing the design he likes and the design he wants to have from us.
Can I see? I just want to see what this is.
Sure, don't worry.
Careful of my microphones and all that. Oh yeah, very comfortable. Very nice. I don't want to mess anything up. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's too... I feel like I'll get in trouble if I don't leave it nicely. And from boats to planes, we took our biennial trip to the Dubai Airshow in November as well. It's always a great trip, all the latest commercial and military hardware on show, plus great access to the industry's big players. We're going to show you excerpts from two interviews now. One is a fascinating and quite frank look into the world of unmanned drones and just what they're capable of. Before that, though, the president of Emirates Airlines, Tim Clark, who during the course of the airshow showed just how much clout the Middle Eastern carriers have.
You ask about financing these aircraft, and we've been asked that question for the last 25 years. And each time we order large numbers, they say, where are you going to fly them and how are you going to pay for them and is the government subsidizing you, etc. We know where we're going to fly them. We know that the government will give us no subsidies or no money. We have recourse to a multitude of debt instruments, which includes our own cash resources, because we are fortunately been able to build up a large amount of cash on our balance sheet. So we don't contemplate having any kind of difficulties. And more recently, we've gone into the Islamic markets with Sukuks. As the Islamic markets become less conservative in their concerns about asset-based collateral. But for Emirates, the ability to raise bonds in the Sukuks, in the Islamic markets, and pin that money against a multitude of requirements, whether it be fleet or work, has been very highly successful for us. As long as we remain profitable, as long as the cash is strong, as long as the balance sheets remain strong, our brand is pretty powerful, not just in the rest of the world, but here. And a lot of investors want to be part of it. So, hey-ho, we were pretty lucky that China took off, that India took off, that Oceania took off, that Europe started to move, America, etc. Then, of course, when it went south in 2008, 2009, we had a network which was so well spread and extensive that we were able to deal with the recessionary pressures we felt in various markets. So as the Eurozone went south more recently, we were able to move business in other areas to fill the seats. You know, we're pretty nimble, we're pretty quick about what we do. When we decide to order aeroplanes, the numbers that we do, we took those decisions, carefully planned, but the manufacturers had no idea, particularly Airbus, what we were going to do with the 380s until about a week ago.
Come with me and we'll talk to Ali Al-Daheri, who's with ADCOM, who's designed the global Yabhun. Do you want to tell us about this first of all?
Yeah, definitely. This is the first time that global Yabhun entering or seen by the public. This aircraft is brand new, never seen, and this is the first model we have. And this is the biggest in the world, is reckoned by carrying capacities, by places where you put things, high altitude and long endurance, up to 40 hours. We equip it with long-range missiles, with torpedoes, and with other sensors like SAR radars and those. And this is all, most of them manufactured by the company.
I will say something looking at it. It is, and I think viewers might think this as well, it's quite
beautiful, don't make mistake.
You could say beautiful, but a lot of people would say it's quite intimidating, quite sinister. It's got bombs strapped to it. Can it do other things as well? Because people would just look at this and think it's a war machine.
That's a good news for you. We just, yesterday, we released an information that ADCOM system will release 200 million dirhams worth of equipment of unmanned aircraft for United Nations, for natural disasters, and for humanitarian aid.
So, for example, something like the Typhoon that we've just seen in Philippines, how would this be deployed? How could it be used?
We will try to organize meetings, and we try to scientists and professors in universities to do something to save lives. ADCOM system sign now, if we can save one human anywhere in the world, that will put us in a better position.
Is there not a conflict, though, with the fact that you're building a machine that can help lives and take away lives at the same, not in the same breath, but it's capable of both?
Well, I hope not. That's not our objective. But to survive our company, we have to do something in the military. But they are not really heavily used for a real engagement. This is for border controls, for drugs traffickers, used for actually helping other people. This is we like to see the objective of those things. And definitely they have a military, I don't have to hide it, they have a military application.
And finally, for our look back at 2013, the Philippines. We took a trip there 1 month after Typhoon Haiyan to see how the local economy was recovering. It was an extraordinary, humbling experience to see such destruction, such devastation, and yet such resilience from the people. This is the report I put together on what locals were doing to get their economy and themselves back on their feet. There's very, very little left on the shoreline at Tacloban. Roldan Valles knows that too well. There's nothing left of his house after the giant storm surge came through.
I was in my house when the storm came, and as it got stronger, we hid inside the village hall. I was here with my uncle and my stepbrother. There were 3 big waves that washed over the building. Basically, we lost everything. The boat, equipment. The only thing left is a small net.
Which means not only property and possessions lost, but a livelihood too. Roldan's a fisherman, or rather he was, given his boat now sits a couple of kilometres inland. So how much were you earning before the typhoon hit and how much now?
Before, I was earning about 300 pesos a day from the catch. But now, I don't earn anything because what I catch is what we eat. Because I don't have a boat.
And the truth is, Roldan's story is replicated thousands of times across Tacloban. So the challenge, after the emergency aid phase, has been to get people working and to make the local economy tick over again. And the obvious starting point is a simple work for cash scheme. This one's organised by a Buddhist foundation from China. The streets, every street in Tacloban is an absolute mess and they need cleaning up, which means you've got ready-made jobs. And this is why you've got, just in this area we're in right now, upwards of 20,000 people lining up every morning for the Work for Cash scheme. It means they get a job, they get a little bit of money in their pocket, and they play a big role in the rescue of their own city.
We give them 500 pesos, so that even if they're cleaning their house, we pay them. Our point is that if every one of them are cleaning up Tacloban, we can revive it. And then with the money that they have on hand, they're able to buy things. If you go to the markets now, you can see there are a lot of things for sale. Immediately, the economy has been revived.
Others are trying to make a difference as well through philanthropy. But not just giving money away. With the Consuela Foundation, people make their case for programs which will provide relief through work and benefit children too. You would probably get so many people coming to you. How do you even start to, I don't think choose is the right word, but how do you even start to do that?
To prioritize, maybe. Prioritize. If it fits to our mission is basically to make sure that children are protected. When you see them able to take care, especially women that are able to give livelihood for each family, children in that family, we are certain that they are provided with protection.
And he's just working really hard.
In fact, pretty much everywhere you go in Tacloban, you uncover little success stories. Sometimes it's just someone who owns a restaurant, a place to gather at a tough time. These are the people who won't let their city die.
Everybody was speaking, and I said, look guys, we have reached rock bottom. There's no way but up. I'm gonna stay a couple of days longer. Now, if things do not improve, then maybe that's the time I would consider leaving the place.
But he didn't. Jerry Ruiz mobilized his business as he would at any other time, only this time it required quick work and a new purpose.
So I had to deal with, I had to look for the suppliers, regular suppliers of our drinks, of our meat, vegetables, that kind of stuff. It took me a couple of days.
But did people want to get going again? You know, when you're talking to your suppliers, did they say,
yes,
yeah, we want to help you out, we want to make this happen?
Yes, and after taking my initial analysis of how things were going, I thought to myself, maybe we could just start with, just offering 1 or 2 of our regular menu.
And it's those small things which make a difference in a disaster zone. Plus the can-do attitude, something which really seemed to prevail in Tacloban. Perhaps the only thing which could triumph over adversity such as this. And that is just some of how we saw the world in 2013 here on Counting the Cost. Remember, all our programs are online at aljazeera.com if you want to revisit any of them. And we'll be back next week with our first new broadcast for 2014. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.